The 6th of June, 1944. Under the code name Operation Overlord, US, British, and Canadian troops cross the English Channel and begin landing on the Normandy coast in France. This operation will become known as D-Day and is the largest amphibious invasion in history, deploying over 160,000 Allied troops by air, land, and sea. In the months that follow, thousands of Allied bombers launched devastating air raids, targeting German cities and claiming countless civilian lives. These relentless bombing campaigns not only reduce German cities to rubble, but also fuel a growing hatred among the population, sparking a desire for revenge, particularly against the British and Americans. On the 26th of August 1944, a day after one of the Allies' most devastating bombing campaigns, a group of enraged German townspeople of Rüsselsheim, armed with sticks, rocks, and shovels, will lynch 6 captured American airmen and beat them to death. However, this atrocity will not remain unpunished, and the perpetrators will pay for this crime with their lives. Ever since Adolf Hitler took power in Germany on the 30th of January 1933, his aggressive policies and territorial expansion set the stage for war. Hitler sought to overturn the Treaty of Versailles, rebuild Germany's strength, and establish dominance in Europe. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland using Blitzkrieg tactics, which combined speed, armored units, and airstrikes. This invasion prompted Britain and France to declare war on Germany, initiating the broader European conflict. Within weeks, Poland fell, and Germany turned its attention westward. In May 1940, the German army launched a rapid invasion of France, bypassing its defenses through Belgium. Paris fell within 6 weeks, and by June, much of Western Europe was under Nazi control. Meanwhile, in the skies over Britain, the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, began the Battle of Britain, a campaign to weaken British resistance through relentless air raids. German bombers targeted cities like London, Coventry, and Birmingham, but Britain's Royal Air Force held firm, marking Germany's first significant defeat. With his sights set on further expansion, Hitler launched his campaign in the east. On the 22nd of June 1941, Germany initiated Operation Barbarossa, an invasion of the Soviet Union. Initially, the German advance was swift, but by late 1942, the tide began to turn at the Battle of Stalingrad. In early 1943, the Red Army decisively defeated the Germans, marking a major turning point in the war. On the 6th of June 1944, the Allies had gained momentum with the landings on the beaches of Normandy, opening a second front in Europe and pushing the German forces into retreat. At the same time, relentless Allied bombing campaigns targeted German cities to cripple the country's industrial capacity, resulting in the deaths of thousands of civilians. On the afternoon of the 24th of August 1944, an American B-24 bomber nicknamed Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am, piloted by 2nd Lieutenant Norman Rogers Jr., took part in a mission targeting an airfield near Hanover. The operation was part of one of the largest aerial formations that ever departed from air bases in England, consisting of over 2,000 aircraft. As the plane approached the target, it encountered intense anti-aircraft fire, and just after releasing their bombs directly on the target, the aircraft sustained several bursts of flak. A direct hit in the bomb bay severely damaged the hydraulic system, knocked out one engine, and left 2 others partially functional. The Wham Bam Thank You Ma'am was critically damaged, forcing the crew to abandon the bomber. The bailout order was issued, and all 9 crew members parachuted into a farm area. Among the crew, Forrest Brinnenstuhl suffered a severe abdominal injury during the descent. After landing, he received help from an elderly farm couple who provided first aid. In gratitude, Brinnenstuhl gave them his silk parachute, a highly valuable item for the farmers. Within hours, most of the crew were captured by Luftwaffe personnel and taken for interrogation. They were then transported to a nearby airbase, where they spent the night. At Roger's insistence, Brennenstuhl was taken to a doctor, who operated on his stomach wound before transferring him to a nearby hospital for further treatment. The next morning, while Brennenstuhl remained in the hospital, the rest of the crew were loaded onto a train bound for a prisoner of war camp near Frankfurt. As the train traveled through the German towns, angry crowds gathered at the windows, shouting insults, shaking their fists, and spitting at the captured terror flyers, as they called them. During the journey, the train encountered a bombed-out section of track near the town of Rüsselsheim, located about 25 kilometers west of Frankfurt, forcing the guards and airmen to get off the train. The guards then began escorting the prisoners on foot toward Rüsselsheim, expecting to catch another train beyond the damaged area. As they approached the town, it was clear that Rüsselsheim had suffered devastating damage. Just hours earlier, on the night of the 25th of August, the town endured a massive bombing raid by the British Royal Air Force, targeting the Opel automobile factory, which had been converted to manufacture airplane parts for the war effort. The British dropped approximately 675 metric tons of bombs and over 400,000 incendiaries on the city. Many of these struck the Opel plant, reducing it to rubble, while others caused widespread destruction throughout Rüsselsheim, including its historical city center. The fires from the raid were so intense that air crews reported seeing them from over 160 kilometers away, leaving half of the town's housing in ruins. Toward the end of the bombing, a German air raid warden named Josef Hartgen mobilized residents in Rüsselsheim to work together and extinguish the fires consuming their homes. As the 8 captured American airmen were marched toward Rüsselsheim, the city was still smoldering. The smell of destruction and death filled the air, and the townspeople were left grieving their losses amidst this chaos. As soon as the townspeople saw the captured crew, they assumed these men were responsible for the devastating bombing the night before. 2 German women, Margarete Wetzler and Käthe Reinhardt, shouted, "There are the terror flyers. Tear them to pieces. Beat them to death. They have destroyed our houses." One of the crew members replied in German, "It wasn't us. We didn't bomb Rüsselsheim." Nevertheless, a woman threw a brick at the crew, triggering a riot during which the townspeople attacked the prisoners with rocks, hammers, sticks, and shovels. The German soldiers who guarded the crew members made no attempt to prevent the beatings. One of the townspeople, Johannes Seipel, was seen kicking an injured airman twice in the throat and chin as the airman sat on the curb. This injured airman had a piece of stone protruding from his skull, and his right shoulder and upper right part of his chest were badly injured. Seipel then told another spectator to also beat them and appeared to be glad. Another man, Philipp Guttlich, was seen beating the flyers over their backs with a stick, which he wielded with both hands, shouting, "Beat them to pieces." When he finished, he said, "My hands hurt so much from the beating." The violence escalated further when the aforementioned German air raid warden Josef Hartgen joined the mob. Armed with a pistol, he became the crew's worst nightmare. Hartgen dragged the limp bodies of the 8 Americans to the curb, lining them up as he screamed to the enraged crowd that he would put them out of their misery. As he walked along the bodies, he shot 6 airmen in the head, but ran out of ammunition, leaving 2 of them, William Adams and Sidney Brown, alive. The mob then placed the airmen on a cart and took them to the cemetery. Upon arrival, the crowd noticed some of the men were still moaning or moving. This provoked more brutal blows with wooden clubs to anyone who appeared to be alive. Suddenly, an air raid siren sounded and the mob fled for shelter, leaving the cart behind. It was later reported that some members of the crew may have been buried alive. During the chaos, Adams and Brown, who were not shot by Hartgen, managed to crawl from the bloodied cart and fled toward the Rhine River, avoiding capture for 4 days. However, they were eventually discovered by a policeman and taken to their original destination, the German prisoner of war transit camp for captured airmen in Oberursel, where they remained until the war in Europe ended. After the war, Rüsselsheim was occupied by the US Army. The killings were reported and the bodies were located on the 28th of June, 1945. 11 residents of Rüsselsheim, including Josef Hartgen, were arrested and put on trial in late July 1945. The defense for the townspeople argued that they had been incited to commit the crime by Nazi propaganda, which encouraged the German people to take reprisals against the American airmen, and that the defendants should not bear the guilt for their actions. Lieutenant Colonel Leon Jaworski, who would achieve fame 3 decades later as the special prosecutor in the Watergate scandal, insisted on the individual responsibility of the defendants for the murders. He argued, saying, "They were all grown men and women. If they are called on to commit the murder and they do, they are just as responsible as any other murderers." The trial lasted 6 days, with eyewitness testimony of the killings by Josef Hartgen and accounts of the beating of the airmen. On the 2nd of August, Josef Hartgen, along with 6 others, were found guilty and sentenced to death. Among the convicted were Margareta Witzler and Käthe Reinhardt, the 2 women who had shouted at the American airmen, triggering the lynching. However, after Margarete's husband and Käthe's brother-in-law appealed that the only offenses the 2 women committed against the pilots were screaming, their death sentences were commuted to 30 years in prison with hard labor. On the 10th of November 1945, Hartgen and 4 others were hanged at the prison in Bruchsal. The sentences were carried out by American Army Sergeant John C. Woods, who had no documented pre-war experience as a hangman. He became infamous for being deliberately bad at his job, because he made the Nazi war criminals that he executed suffer, as they all died a long, agonizing death. The Nazis executed by Sergeant Woods fell from the gallows with a drop insufficient to snap their necks, resulting in their death by strangulation, that in some cases lasted tens of minutes. Even though before his execution, Josef Hartgen was seen kissing the cross. A year earlier, when he had been beating the flyers and one bystander protested against the assaults, Hartgen told him, "Be quiet, or the same thing will happen to you." Among those who were hanged by Woods on the 10th of November 1945 was also Friedrich Wust, who had struck one of the flyers with 1 or 2 blows with a hammer. Wust was later seen kneeling on the ground and beating the head of a prostrate flyer with the same hammer. All this time, people were shouting, "Beat! Beat them!" Another hanged man was Johann Opel, who beat 2 flyers with a broom. He struck with such force that the head of the broom broke off from the handle. He also incited and encouraged others to attack the flyers and kept shouting, "We beat them on the head." The other 2 men executed on the 10th of November 1945 by John C. Woods were the aforementioned Johannes Seipel and Philipp Güttlich. In addition to these executions, Otto Stolz, a carpenter and SA member, and a German soldier, Franz Umstatter, were also tried for their participation in the killings. Stolz was convicted for climbing onto the cart near the cemetery and attempting to finish off the still-living victims with a club, described as the size of a table leg. He was executed in 1947. Umstatter, whom witnesses testified stomped on the victim so hard his boots broke, was found guilty and also sentenced to death. However, Umstatter's conviction was overturned in 1948 on a technicality, as the charges against him failed to specify where the crimes were committed. In August 2001, survivor Sidney Brown, accompanied by his wife, visited Rüsselsheim at the invitation of the town's mayor. He took part in a remembrance service and received a formal apology. In August 2004, a memorial was unveiled at the site where the airmen endured the worst of their ordeal, near the Rüsselsheim railway station on Grabenstrasse.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.